everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome everyone to Black Tea News. I am your host, Christina Barr, and Wisconsin's got a lot of stuff going on right now. And we're going to be talking about it, the aftermath of the Rittenhouse stuff, which is some more bad takes. We got some more bad takes that I want to talk about. But also last night, yesterday, I guess not so much last night, but there was a parade yesterday, and someone drove through a crowd. And information started to come out kind of slowly. I don't know, when things like this happen, and I wrote a message on my Facebook page about it, and I just said, FYI, this is what's going on. And on one hand, the media was just like quick to jump to some things. They wanted to rule out some things, and they said that the person who did it was like fleeing a scene. And that's what happened. It seemed like people weren't trying to make it deliberate, and it seems like people aren't trying to talk too much about it today, which I can only imagine why. Not imagine, I could guess. I think it's an educated guess, because the person who did it was Black, and they're always with their racial politics. And this person who did it committed the crime deliberately, it would seem, was I'm not saying this is terribly relative that we know. Some people are like, it's obviously terrorism. I think we need a little more details, but it was obviously deliberate. But they do appear to be BLM left-wing activists. They did tweet out something about Kyle Rittenhouse a few days before, but I'm not saying that that's the reason why he did it. We don't know his reasonings. But the big thing is that he got released a few days ago off of a $1,000 bond. And he's someone who skipped their bond before, so he really should have had a higher amount, but people see cash bail as a problem, so they see too many Black people in jail, regardless of if they're criminals and deserve to be there or not. So there's all this reform, because we're talking so much about equity, and we don't care about equality. And if the law is being applied equally, we care about what are the numbers? What's the raw numbers? So you have all these prosecutors and DAs, whoever across the country, who are being funded by George Soros, and a lot of these places, including just everywhere. Just to be frank, this was something they really launched in 2016. Well, people had their eye on the big balls, as far as like presidential candidates and so on. You had a lot of left-wing activists that were like, we're going to take over the justice system because they deem that it is unfair. So now you have they have a radical DA there who is against these things and wants to be for racial justice and cares about the numbers, but they don't care if they're actually fighting against criminals. Now, people pointed this out last night, and now they've released a statement saying, oh, well, he shouldn't have been out on that bail. It's a little too late. So 5 people are gone now, and 48 have been injured, and some of those are kids. They plowed through kids, they plowed through families, they plowed through granny dancers, and this was a man who should have been in jail, who has a very long criminal record. But we have equity. This is what equity gets you. When people talk about tearing down systems because they're unfair, including in this Rittenhouse case, people with any sort of good sense absolutely know that Rittenhouse should have gotten off and been not guilty, because that's what the facts were. He was legal for him to carry that firearm. Every single person he shot, they were assailants, not victims, and he did it in self-defense. Those are the facts, and people keep saying things like, well, we're not surprised. You shouldn't be surprised because that's what the facts bore out. But then they'll then they'll shift. And they'll say, well, the system was set up to help white supremacists. No, the law is just the law. The law is the law. It applies broadly. As a matter of fact, I think this was the exact same day, a black man got off on self-defense. A black man got off on self-defense the same day as Kyle. Or at least their trials are going on at the same time. And it applied, and it worked for him, and it worked for Kyle. It's not a white supremacist conspiracy. And mind you, how is it white privilege when he killed 3 other white dudes? He killed 3 other white dudes. So how come their white privilege didn't cancel out Kyle's white privilege? That's a question. They know it has nothing to do with race, but they don't like the system. So when people talk about the systems and they want to tear it down for their equity, they talk about critical race theory and all and inclusivity and all this other kind of stuff. Someone says equity, run. It does not mean equality. If they meant equality, they would say equality. Equity has a different meaning. They want to tear down these systems, even if we're all equal in the eyes of the law. They do not like that. Critical race theory does not like a just society where everyone is colorblind. The same law that protects me protects you, regardless of our skin color. They do not like that. They don't think it's fair. They all have this jargon, well, because of all this institutional racism throughout the years, you can't possibly be fair and equal. Well, no, it sometimes the system doesn't work, sure, because individuals sometimes are bad. And if there's some kind of law that's bad, we can look at the law and hopefully get rid of it if it's actually racist. But just because there's a disproportionate outcome and you don't like the numbers does not mean that the system is broken. It means sometimes our cultures are broken. Sometimes it means our cities are broken. A lot of times it just means the family structure is broken. There's a big correlation between what kind of life you live and whether you have 2 parents in the home. Just is. And it's the highest for fatherless homes, is highest in the Black community. So there's a lot of your disparities right now. A lot of people aren't being raised by their dads, learning how to be good men. And they'll say, well, that's because you're locked up. Well, if you're a criminal, you get locked up. Some people need to go to jail. I'm sorry. You can't just release them because they're Black. It's crazy. Absolutely bonkers. So I'm sick of equity. I'm sick of equity. In this case, leftism is going too far. And people are gone. People are injured. Some are in critical condition. And they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. And if we don't call them out, vote them out, they'll continue to just tear down America. I'm jumping a little ahead of myself. I want to thank Brighter Michigan PAC for allowing me to be in the studio. If I say something today that triggers you, they don't care. I don't care. It doesn't work like that. I'm just using the space, and I do thank them. And you know what? You need to find organizations to support, like Brighter Michigan PAC or whoever. But I'm in the studio, so I'll say them. Who care about these seats that maybe don't get the glitz and the glamour of the presidential seats and some of the congressional seats. Still, they are focused on those things too. But you need to be focused on who's going to be your DA and other stuff like that. You need to look at the prosecutors, and you need to look at those things and be involved in those races, because George Soros and left-wing activists, they are trying to just to shovel America, just flip it over like it's a table. I don't know. I don't know. But they want these criminals out of jail and on the streets because they're Black or Hispanic or whatever. They don't like the racial. They're fighting for equity. It doesn't matter if they're criminals. Oof, out on the streets. So make sure that you're supporting organizations that are going to support candidates that believe in the rule of law and want to actually protect the citizens, because that's important. So thank you to Brighter Michigan PAC. Please consider visiting blacktnews.com, checking out content on the website that I have. Please consider looking at the store and different items that we have in the store. Please consider, it's Christmas time. I write a bunch of books, so you guys can look at the different books that I have available on Amazon on ebook or paperback. If you got kids, I got some really good kid books, some that I'm still working on for like picture books, but I do have chapter books. Super Kid, consider buying that for your kids, and Super Kid 2. Really quickly, it's about a boy who has an overactive imagination. Well, it's loosely based off stories about my dad. So when my dad was really little, he thought he was becoming Superboy because he was stronger than all the kids in his class. So he did some pretty radical things. So I decided, I'm going to take some of these stories and put them in a book. So Felix has an overactive imagination. He doesn't actually have superpowers. He just thinks he does. So he teams up with this kid, Kiara, who goes along with it because she's a huge crush on him. So she becomes Princess Lady Diva because she had to be all three. And then they help out this other kid in their community named Lee. And so Lee thinks it's all real. So he becomes Stickman, and they have a little superhero team. It's got a lot of great conservative type values that you would want to teach to your kids and your families and stuff. My dream was, when I wrote this book, was to hear Rush Limbaugh say, "Why do liberals hate Super Kid?" So that obviously cannot happen now, but you guys can still be part of the dream and share Super Kid with your families. Also, I would ask that you consider supporting Black Teen News. So over the weekend, my dad called me. He's in Guatemala right now. He's been on the mission field for a few weeks now. He's coming home just before Thanksgiving. It's his favorite holiday. And he complimented me on an article that I wrote that's on blackteennews.com. And it's about the Rittenhouse case and how there's so much shady stuff surrounding it. We broke a lot of that down, I think, on Friday. But he read the article and he said it was really good. And then he confessed to me something that I could not believe my dad, of all people, said. He thought some of the assailants were Black, some of the people who Kyle shot. Now, if you know my dad, you know that he's pretty plugged in normally, and he likes politics, and he's not someone who consumes left-wing media. He's not. Now, and if you're overseas, a lot of stuff you're watching is CNN, especially like in Mexico, and I don't know what all they're watching in Guatemala, but I would assume it's the same. And man, they have a skewed sense of life, I'll tell you, on American politics because of CNN. But he said the news media was making it seem like they were Black. And so he told me that this is really scary. Now, my dad, he's very macho. He does not use terms like the media is very scary. And he was just awestruck at how much he was deceived. Now, he wasn't like up in arms like the left wing, oh, let's get Kyle or anything like that. He just, was passively interested in the case. But he realized he was deceived and that the media deceived him. And so I told my sisters, I'm like, I can't believe Dad thought that. And then they're like, Mom thought that until she overheard us talking about it. And again, not someone who consumes left-wing media. That's just what the media was presenting. And I know that's the case for like I've heard that online, other people say, but I was surprised that my parents thought that. And I'm not telling the story to bash my parents or anything like that. They're very, like I said, normally plugged in. My dad, he's been on the mission field and stuff. And there's literally like a Fox News. My dad needs a new TV. Hopefully we can get that for Christmas. But or someone will get it. But there's literally like Fox News like burned into the TV. Like that's why we need a new one in his TV room. But he'd have that on. And then he has a TV as his computer screen. And then he'd be like looking up articles and being on his computer, maybe even watching other news stuff while Fox News is still playing behind him. So like I said, normally plugged in. But in this case, he was deceived by the media. And the media purposely and maliciously deceived people on this case for a narrative. I think we all know that if independent media wasn't on the ground during the time of this trial, not during the trial, but when before the riots happened that night, or before the Kyle shot anyone, I would say, before that, during and afterwards, getting interviews from Kyle, talking to other people, getting footage of what actually happened. One of the people from the Daily Caller was right behind him when Rosenbaum got shot. If not for all the footage that people had and testimonials that people had, there's a chance that this kid might not have gotten off, even though it was clearly self-defense. And even though we had all this information from the jump, videos that were available for over a year now, the jury still deliberated a few days, but the public opinion was still pretty divided because of what the media did. And the media had access to all of this information. Well, yeah, obviously it was self-defense, and they still didn't care. And you have people on the news like Joy Reid and other people who say, I'm not surprised. Well, you're not surprised because it's obvious that was self-defense. It was never hard. He should have never even been prosecuted. And it was clearly political. It was clearly political. But they still are pushing this insane narrative, even right now, for their own agenda. Now, I'm mentioning this not just because I want you to be aware of how deep the deception goes, because, like I said, it floored me that my dad thought that. It absolutely floored me. But I want to say, if you are sick of mainstream media, you should consider supporting independent media. So there's my plug right there. Please consider supporting Black Tea News. I'm glad for everyone who's new to the show, new to the channel, new to my social media. I thank you. But if you could consider digging a little deeper, and you want to help support what I do here, you want to see it expand, I ask that you do that. There's a lot of people that I listen to, a lot of people that I follow, a lot of people that I watch that I really respect, and they start off small like I'm starting off, and I'm really happy with the trajectory that I've had over the past year. I reached the landmark of having 1.1 million likes this past week on TikTok. Got 70,000 followers. I had a lot of engagement on Facebook and so on last week. I appreciate everyone who's new to the train. But if you do want to support independent media and help Black Tea News grow, I would ask that you consider going to blacktnews.com and that you consider leaving a donation. So the link is down there, going across the ticker tape, blacktnews.com/donate. And if you can, I would appreciate whatever you guys can do. Now let's get to the news. We are talking about it. So a friend of mine, G Prime 85, did a comic. This one's a little spicy, but it's about the topic of the day. And so you have a news anchor on TV yesterday talking about a car attack going through the Christmas parade, killing several individuals. And then he starts to see, he starts to read on the teleprompter what he looks like. And he's like, oh no, don't make me say it. I don't want to. And then he ends up taking his own life rather than admitting that it is a Black person. Now, the context of this, there is a video. There's an actual live video of a news anchor who has a man on the line. And so he's an eyewitness. And so he's like, well, he was a Black guy. And he's like, and the reporter's like, he's like, and the Black guy's like, I'm not saying this to be one of those people to just be like, oh, they're Black. He's like, I'm Black myself. He's like, but he was a Black person. He's like, so I don't know what you want to use or not use or whatever. He's like, well, you're live. And he's like, oh, well. So it's like people need descriptions to know what's going on, who to look for and whatnot. But it's so political nowadays about what someone's description is. The fact of the matter is he's a criminal. He did something bad. And how did we get here? And what is going to be done next? Those are the relevant things. So people being so scared to report, are they Black or whatever? If it's a white person, they are quick to report they're white. If they think there's some kind of tie to some kind of right-wing extremism, the media is so quick to say that. If they are Black or brown in any sort of way, it's like a person. And people on the right were like, when they first started reporting it, they're like, a person, huh? A person. So eventually, yeah, it came out that he was a Black guy. But it's humorous how wrapped up they are and how sensitive they are. But the fact that people who commit crime, if they're black and they see too many black people locked up, they say, oh, it's a disproportionate impact. Therefore, systemic racism, the system is bad. We need to get rid of cash bail and all this other kind of stuff. When we need to be focused on, is there corruption in the system? We can see that with Rittenhouse's case, right? We know, people on the left and the right both know that absolute power corrupts absolutely. That people, whether a prosecutor has a political agenda, whether it's to advance themselves, they may be too harsh on somebody. With the case of Rittenhouse, the DA knew that it was a loser, so he gave it to the assistant DAs, and they still did it for political reasons. I don't know how deep that goes with the mayor or whoever. I don't know why exactly they decided to still push this forward. But we know it was a whole national news story because there was a narrative surrounding the Rittenhouse case. So if we can be objective and be like, if that can happen to Kyle, of course it can happen to people all the time. All the time. However, so many people on the left who want to just go way off the rails with this stuff and partner with groups like BLM who have other political agendas. It's a group that was formed by trained Marxists, that came out of their own mouths, where they haven't had it. They did get rid of this when it got too much heat. But on their What We're About page, they said they want to dismantle cisgender privilege. They want to disrupt the nuclear family. They let everybody know how accepting they were and inclusive they were to all these different kind of groups. But you know what I noticed wasn't on there? Black dads or just dads. Because they don't care about the nuclear family structure. And that What We're About isn't on there anymore, but they still have like curriculum that they want to help push into schools and so on. If you go to blacktnews.com, I have these links. I wrote an article that said, the title was something along the lines of how BLM duped Christians. Because there's a lot of Christians that I knew that supported the group. And I'm just like, they were against like everything that you stand for. And you just jumped on it because you want to, I don't want to say virtue signal, because a lot of people had the best intentions at heart. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions as well. So you have to know what kind of people you are supporting. So instead of grouping yourselves with these really, really left-wing organizations who have a focus so much on race, if people want to come together about these issues and tackling any sort of corruption there may be, you have to eliminate race from it. It is just the best way to do it. And I know people will say, well, Black people are impacted the most. Don't turn people off who want to achieve the same goal as you do, because there could be other reasons besides like systemic racism or racial issues or racism or whatever, that explain why those numbers are higher in the Black community or so on, wherever it is. So people on the right want to look at individual case-by-case basis because they want to get to the actual root of whatever it is. And if it's racism, they will help you fight it. If it's a class thing, they will help you fight it. If it's some kind of corruption where someone is trying to advance their political career, they will want to help you find it. But if you're just pointing racism, you're not going to get to the real cause. And let's be honest, some people don't want to get to the real cause because they believe the problem is America. That's why they want to tear down the systems. They believe America is the problem. And that's why they argue that our system was built on all this stuff and we need to look at the system and tear it down. They're not like the civil rights movement where it was about moving things forward. It's about tearing it down and recreating things in their own image. And that's why we're seeing a lot of problems here today, and a problem like what happened recently last night. So if you really care about those things, what you need to do is find you someone who is like a libertarian leaning Republican, or they could be flat out, I don't know, libertarians doesn't seem like they had a lot done by themselves. So find some libertarian leaning Republicans that you can partner with to try to change things. But just saying I want to focus all on race and do my own thing or just partner with these groups like BLM that have all these other political agendas, which include Marxism, and it just does. You're not going to achieve a goal, not a good goal. You're just going to achieve continuous destruction. And you may have people on your side for a little bit, like you did in 2020, but people are going to wake up to the foolishness. 2020 was such a annoying year for me. It really was. It really was. It was like living in the Twilight Zone for me. Like people wouldn't listen, and people were so wrapped up in the virtue signaling, like and some of it was just virtue signaling, and some of it was people. That's the best way they thought to go about tackling these things, and they felt genuinely bad, but a lot of you got duped. You just did. So let's go into more detail. Here's a news report. From a press conference that happened not too long ago.
Provide an update. At 4:39 p.m. on Sunday, November 21st, 2021, a lone subject intentionally drove his maroon SUV through barricades into a crowd of people that was celebrating the Waukesha Christmas Parade, which resulted in killing 5 individuals and injuring 48 additional individuals. I just received information that 2 of the 48 are children and they're in critical condition. We have information that the suspect prior to the incident was involved in a domestic disturbance, which was just minutes prior, and the suspect left that scene just prior to our arrival to that domestic disturbance. When the suspect was driving through into the crowd, one officer did discharge his firearm and fired shots at the suspect to stop the threat, but due to the amount of people, had to stop and did not fire any other additional shots. The officer is on administrative leave as part of department protocol. No one was injured as a result of the officer discharging his firearm. The subject was taken into custody a short distance from the scene, and we are confident he acted alone. There is no evidence that this is a terrorist incident. Due to the wind yesterday.
Yeah. Like I don't know if it has to necessarily be terrorism. I know some people are like, it's got to be. They just won't say. Then some people are just crazy and they're evil and they don't have a political aim. So we'll see. That's still yet to be determined. However, they were reporting, or the news was trying to say, different outlets saying that he was being chased, and then he went through the crowd. They did clear up in that press conference that he was not being pursued at the time. So the video looks deliberate, and it definitely was deliberate. Some crazy stuff. Again, he was out. He had a cash bail bond of $1,000 that he paid, even though he had skipped out on that before and really shouldn't have been set so low. But this was interesting. According to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Dale Brooks Jr., the man suspected of being the driver, has been charged 3 times in less than 2 years with recklessly endangering the safety of others, most recently November 5th as part of a domestic abuse incident, for which he was also charged with resisting or obstructing an officer. In the case this month, a woman told police Brooks purposely ran her over with his vehicle while she was walking through a gas station parking lot after he had followed her there after a fight. According to the criminal complaint, the woman was hospitalized for her injuries, court records show. There's also the T-Post millennial, Andy Ngo, I think that's how you say his last name. He reported that on some posts that he made on social media in the past, I believe his Facebook is now deactivated, about running people over with his car. So there's just, I guess, a pattern of intent here. And apparently this woman was injured. So there's some it goes beyond intent here, but to do something so monstrous at a Christmas parade while they're like, grannies dancing and kids, that is some next level evil stuff. That is some next level evil stuff. So I hope that is only the actions of a deranged, crazy single person. Um, and people don't have to worry about those sort of things when they go out to try to enjoy the holidays with their families. But this is bonkers. And the truth of the matter that this man, if he had been set on a cash bail that was appropriate, then this wouldn't happen. But they don't want cash bail set high for these people who are low income because they say that's classist and whatnot. So they lower the bail. And I don't. Why did he even have the option? He was skipping out on it anyway. Um, so they lowered it, and he paid it and got out, and he was out to do this. So if someone was doing their job instead of searching and trying to do the whole equity justice thing, 5 people would probably still be alive, and there wouldn't be 48 injured right now, including kids. So the DA has gotten into some hot water, and people pointed out that he's one of these social justice reformer type people um, that believes that we need to be innovative and make our justice system fair and more proportional. Um, I'm pretty sure your priority should be about seeking justice. And see, that's another thing. You have all these people who want to do all this reform, which they don't care about were people actually criminals and so on. But what are we doing to help our communities make it so that they don't end up in a situation where they become someone like him? I mentioned fatherless homes. That's a really big thing. That can have a really big impact on the community. And people know this. People know this. If Denzel Washington has had some good commentary on this subject. When people he was doing one of a film, and at the subject, I think he was a lawyer, or it was some criminal justice reforms, not reform, but some kind of movie about justice. And they asked him his opinion, and he said, if it's too late by the time when your child is an adult and the father's not in the life and the streets raise them, at that point when the cops get to them and the system gets to them, it's too late. You have to do something about their lives before that. But we are in such a sexual revolution age where you don't need the man, and you can go do your own thing. And men are taught not to be responsible. They're just taught to be wild. And the women were like, well, we're going to be like the men in this and be wild. And we don't have any good family structure right now in this country. And it's worse than other communities um, across the board. It's bad pretty much everywhere, but it's the worst in the Black community. And that's why it's so bonkers. Organizations like Black Lives Matter said they want to disrupt the nuclear family. That was in their What We Are About page. And people gave this organization millions and millions of dollars last year. Millions and millions of dollars. And in the article I wrote about how they duped Christians, I talk about where they decided to spend those dollars. Majority of it, they just pocketed it and said, we're going to use it to grow our organization, which a lot of people do that. But a lot of the money that they decided to give to spread it to other groups, a majority of them were like LGBT focused. And that's fine if that's what you want to do. But is that what most people believe the organization was about? I don't think so. That it's called Black Lives Matter. People are out marching in the streets when there's, police shooting somebody, regardless of whether it was justified or not. They go out and march, and they, spin their web of talking points, and they push their narrative. So people assumed it was just about police and brutality and other stuff like that when they have this whole other agenda going on. And so some people are like, well, Black Lives Matter, I'm for the movement, not the group. The group's been here for a long time. They own that phrase. They just do. They just do. And I still reject the premise that cops are just going out there just killing the black folks. There's not data to support it. Now you can argue that they don't have an obligation statewide to report all that data. That's true. That's true. But there's still no evidence to support it. Not that it's some kind of epidemic that was worth all the rioting and the looting and stuff that happened last year. Just absolutely not. So after the DA got called out on social media and stuff by like Cernovich and Jack Posobiec and other big accounts, he did end up releasing a statement. And they said earlier in the year when Brooks had a bail that they ended up lowering, they lowered it because essentially I think because the jails were too full and he wouldn't have been able to have a speedy trial or something like that. So they lowered it because they thought that was in their best interest. And so so they have a flawed system right now. So they're just letting prisoners out. Okay. And they said that was justified then, but they said right now they're doing an investigation because he shouldn't have been released on $1,000. He should resign, and people should. Oh my gosh, Republicans should really have a strategy to talk about situations like this, talk about the rising crime, and go after these seats everywhere. It's not just about who's going to take the governorship and Secretary of States and other stuff like that. They have to attack and get these school boards because of critical race theory stuff, and they got to go after, whatever seat has to do with protecting us and crime and so on. They have to go after those things too. They have to be vigilant about these seats. You cannot allow these people to continuously put in these George Soros equity obsessed prosecutors, DAs, or whoever to come on and just wreck our cities and then have it spill out into the suburbs. Go activate the suburbs. have them even pass it out in the cities. Especially if it's going to spill over to their side. Some people don't care until it hits their neighborhood. Well, there you go. Loudoun County. A lot of people are talking about Loudoun County because of the Virginia race and the case where the boy in a skirt raped a girl in the bathroom and they were like covering it up, and the dad ended up getting arrested, and he ended up being an example in the National School Board Association's. Hey, this is why we need the DOJ to use the Patriot Act on parents. The DA wanted to prosecute him. George Soros funded prosecutor. Someone who's like, oh, we need equity. We're going to be really soft on crime, except if you are a bigot and you don't want boys in skirts in the girls' bathroom, then we have to get you. So it's not that these people think that power is bad and that people aren't corrupt. It's that they don't like you and they want to be able to wield it themselves against people who are against their agendas. So we'll see how this story evolves and what sort of backlash there will be. Republicans need to get really strategic about this stuff. They really do. They really do. This should be a red wave everywhere in school board, governorships, everything. They gotta build a strategy. They gotta build a strategy, especially as crime keeps going up. It's amazing. I think I mentioned last week, because the Rittenhouse case and people were talking about minors and if he were black. I don't know if I mentioned this on the show actually, but there was a case. No, I'm pretty sure I did. A case in DC where two minors, one was 13 and one was 15 at the time. They stole a man's car, and he was from Pakistan, immigrated over here to have a better life for his family. He's an Uber driver. And they had a taser and they were trying to steal his car. And so he was hanging on for dear life. The car crashed, and he ended up dying. And there, as the car tipped over and they're getting out, people were really mad because the girls were like, "Where's my phone? Where's my phone?" And it's like, there's a man dying that, like, he's dead in the street, and you're worried about your phone. They got sentenced, but they will be in juvie until they're 21, and that's what happened after they killed a man. And so people are like, "Oh, be really soft on them. They're just kids. They're babies." I'm like, you think they didn't know it was wrong to steal a car? And so in DC, they had a radical spike in carjackings, and this happened in broad daylight. But the crazy thing about it, the whole thing is crazy, but I'm just like, if you are like a little bit late on your parking meter, you got a ticket, but they can't stop carjackings? Really? So these cities run by Democrats are just, get out of cities, man. Get out of cities. But at the same time, Republicans cannot just utterly, at least Republican leadership cannot just totally concede the fight from these big cities, because they still have a lot of bodies in them. And you absolutely need to make sure that they will not overwhelm the state on election night with their raw numbers, when there's like, when the statewide population matters. Because like in presidential election and stuff, we don't have a national popular vote, but in Michigan, for example, in most states, your popular vote in your state matters for your who gets elected, who wins electoral votes, or the popular vote will matter, of course, when the governor is selected and so on. So you want to make sure that you can still make a dent in these cities. So don't just totally abandon them. I was talking to somebody from Ohio, and he said, in Cleveland, like they totally, he's like, they just abandoned it. It's gone. Like he's like, they're not doing anything. They just own that. And that's not good, because those numbers will try to overwhelm if they can, and they'll keep swelling, and they'll keep getting bluer. But you got to make your case on why their cities suck, and why they need to make better decisions and better choices. You just need to. Can't just surrender all the ground. But you personally, yeah, you can get the heck out of there if you want to. You got to get the heck out of there if you do what's best for your family. Do what's absolutely best for your family. So we'll see what this story turns into, how it will evolve. It seems like, the media is covering it, not a lot, not like how they've been covering like Rittenhouse or something like that, because they had a narrative that they were trying to push, even though it didn't fit, but they tried to push it. They tried to mold it a certain way. But let's see how much they cover this. But the person who did it has the wrong skin color, obviously, and he was out because of some bad left-wing policies. So I expect it to disappear pretty fast, but we're going to follow it. We're absolutely going to follow it. So when I was with you guys on Friday, the president had released a statement about Rittenhouse. No, he didn't release a statement. He got off the plane, and they asked him about it, and he said, "Well, I respect the jury's decision." And I was like, "Oh, he's smarter than the Democrats, the rest of his party." Because Kamala Harris said, this, why I've worked so hard for justice reform and equity. And it's like, bruh, you really haven't. You have a terrible record yourself. But she implied this was a bad thing, a thing to be sad over. So then Biden, I don't know who wrangled him and said, "You better do what we want, old man." And he released a statement and saying, the jury decided what they decided, but if you're sad, it's like, why should people be sad? It was a correct verdict, sir. So they can't help themselves from still, stoking the flames of division. That's what they do. It's what they love. So I'm sorry for implying that Joe Biden would do the right thing. I didn't quite imply that, but I gave you the news at the time, and then they came around and released a new statement, and it shouldn't surprise anyone. It shouldn't surprise anyone. It's amazing how they lead him. Trump was someone who he basically basically became the leader of the Republican Party, and when he would move, everyone else would follow. Biden is someone who was moving to the tune of the very progressive wing of his party. And that's not why people elected him, or that's not why people think they elected him. The progressives and really left-wing people, they're like, well, we're going to support Biden and hopefully make him move to how we want him to move. And they have been successful in that. AOC, Bernie, Sanders are all very happy about that. But people who thought we were going to have some kind of normalcy, some kind of balance, some kind of unity. That's what Biden said we'd have, which you're a fool, because Biden is the one who'd be brawling and introducing dirty stuff like what he did to Clarence Thomas, Borking. And so if you thought that, you just don't know Biden's history. You were just unaware of his history, because he's been really nasty throughout the years. However, people thought that he was going to be the grown-up in the room, and he's not. He is the senile old man with dementia who's maybe pooping in his pants. Those are the rumors. Those are the rumors. So I wish they could care about the country that they are presiding over. If only they could at least do that. Because it is destructive to keep continuously pushing these narratives that are destructive to the country. If we keep racializing everything to the point where someone can get off on absolute slam dunk self-defense and be like, it's because our system is bad and it's evil. So I want to, now that I mentioned that, I did go over this on Saturday when I had a guest on for Let's Talk About It. I have Amanda Justice. If you haven't seen it, we had a very good time. So you can go back and watch that. But I did talk about this Joy Reid video. Usually we just talk about TikTok videos, but I'm like, dude, I got to show you this. So I actually want to show you guys and go through it really quickly, because Joy Reid is the worst. She's the absolute worst. And if you didn't see this, if you didn't hear this, I want you to know how utterly awful her take was. And at the time on Friday, when I was going through this and talking about Joy Reid, she had only said, like, let's keep the families in mind and pray for them and whatever. I'm like, well, you don't feel that way about Kyle's family, but I guess that's on the classier end of what I thought she was capable of. But then she got on her show and proved that why she's just the worst.
Not at all surprised. We've talked about this. I mean, this is what we expected to happen. Because I think we have to keep in mind when we're watching the criminal justice system at work that it was designed to do exactly what it did today. Gun law.
Okay, yeah. So it was designed. It did do exactly what it was designed to do, because it was a slam dunk self-defense case. So there's that. They're not surprised because they're like, well, we're not surprised, but we're still upset. You're not surprised because he didn't do anything wrong in the eyes of the law. That's the truth of the matter, but she goes in and spins it and all this kind of dumb stuff.
Laws helped to enhance the design to allow this verdict to happen today. This country was built on the idea that white men had a particular kind of freedom and a particular kind of citizenship that only they have.
The same Constitution, the same laws that protect me, protect Kyle, protect white people, Hispanic people, Asian people, the same laws. But you know what? If you're not aware, I've had to deal with people who have told me while talking about like critical race theory and stuff that the Constitution wasn't made for brown people. The Constitution applies for me, for you. It is inherent that we have rights, unalienable rights that shouldn't be infringed upon, and they don't care. They would rather just tear down all your rights for this narrative. They are willing to hinder your Second Amendment privileges, to say that merely by having a gun you're provoking someone. Guys, listen, think about this. If I were in a situation, because they're saying Kyle shouldn't went there because it was dangerous and he had a gun, he's provoking people. If I was in a situation where I went to like a bad part of Detroit or something to visit family, and I was carrying, and I got into an altercation with someone, and I used my gun to protect myself. Let's say I was at a gas station. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a fire. I put out the fire, and then some guy gets angry and chases me. let's say I take him out because I was in fear for my life. And then they say, well, why did you go to an area that had high crime? Well, I had the right to be there. Like, I had a reason to go. I don't care if you don't like my reason. You can't just ban people from going to dangerous places and say you deserve whatever you get, and then just pretend that they don't have a right to defend themselves. Like, these are the kind of arguments that people are making. And it's like, well, you had a gun, so you provoked them. What? I had a legal right to carry it. If I was going to a dangerous place, why wouldn't I be packing? Why wouldn't I want to protect myself? And let's say that person I took out happened to be a child rapist. Like, so why would you still be arguing this after the fact, knowing the kind of people that were pursuing Kyle? But they didn't care that the same things that would protect Kyle when he was totally in the right, if you dismantle those things, you dismantle it for everyone else. But they don't care because they like their racial nonsense too much. It's just utterly unbelievable.
That gives, from the slave catchers on, the right to inflict violence in the name of protecting property.
We have the right to protect our property. These people are communists. They want to pretend like it's not a good thing. If you want to protect your own property, even though in some of these riots, Black-owned businesses, people who worked their whole lives for something, lost things. The place that Kyle was protecting was owned by Indian people. He was protecting a place for brown people that they owned, and those jerks had the audacity to lie about it on the stand. But he was there to protect them, and they still have the nerve to call this kid a white supremacist. And she invoked slavery to get all these emotions stirred up and be like, yeah, we shouldn't protect property. Are you kidding me? It's vastly different when people believe that Black people were their property versus like an Indian family owning a car lot. It's just really different, guys. It's just really different.
That's like the foundational creation of the United States. So it would have been shocking. I'm glad you mentioned the Derek Chauvin verdict. That was the surprising verdict. This should have been unsurprising. But what I do think we have to think about is not only the families of the two men who died and the family of Mr. Grosskreutz. They should be in our minds right now because they suffered. And there have been a lot of white people who have defended Black lives and paid for it with their lives. That goes all throughout our history, going back to John Brown. You go through
So she just invoked the name of John Brown, who he's a very interesting figure, historical figure. But what you need to know is he's an abolitionist. I don't think Gage was there for Black advancement. I don't think Mr. Hubbard was there for the advancement of Black people. I don't think Rosenbaum was there for the advancement of Black people because they were like busy doing looting and rioting stuff. Like they were, vandalizing and whatnot. They weren't marching in the streets peacefully saying, no justice, no peace, which is also a threat. So I don't really like that either. But they could have held signs, on the megaphone saying we love Black people. That's not what they did. As a matter of fact, Rosenbaum said, shoot me in word. And he also said, I'm not afraid to go back to jail or prison. So to compare them to John Brown, I was just floored when I heard that. I was just floored. But why should I be surprised? Why should I be surprised that she would say something so crazy? I think that's all I want to play. I think there's a little bit more, but we're done. We're done with joy. So when people talk about equity and people talk about critical race theory and people talk about systems, just be aware of the fact that they're putting all this together because they want to tear down these things that are meant to protect us because they are ultimately gunning to destroy America, take it down, to rebuild it in their own psychotic image. And I don't know how deep Joy is in on The gag, I don't know how deep it goes, but I know she's willing to go along with the narrative. And it's crazy. She's like the biggest race baiter. The biggest race baiter. A lot of people who talk about racial, disparities and other stuff like that, and racial justice, are people who are inflaming racial divisions and are extraordinarily racist themselves, especially when it comes to like Joy Reid, Michael Eric Dyson, and others. So we shouldn't take any of these people seriously. I mean, we can mock them, we can complain about them, but to the people who actually are like, yep, Joy was really killing it today, I have the deepest pity and disgust for you. I really do. God, you need help. You need help. Really do. I want to show you guys quickly a tweet from Mark Ruffalo and Pedro Pascal. This is Mark Ruffalo's tweet. He tweeted out, we come together to mourn the lives lost to same racist system that devalues Black lives and devalued the lives of Anthony and JoJo. JoJo is Rosenbaum, the serial rapist. So I think it's kind of gross to give them cute little pet names. So this is Mark Ruffalo, who is the Disney star who plays the Hulk in Avengers and whatnot and all the stuff. So I don't know. Keep that in mind next time you see him on TV. He's a really big leftist, and he tweeted some other things, but again, the information's out there with the kind of people that you're mourning. I don't understand. We have hindsight. And then you had Pedro Pascal. He's the actor in The Mandalorian. Joseph Rosenbaum, 36. Anthony Huber, 27. Murdered August 25th, 2020. Rest in peace. I know when you do that kind of stuff, I don't think you're resting in peace. You got to meet your maker, and then he's going to decide what to do with you. So, people were talking about him. People talk about Mark, and it was trending, and they were roasting him. But what I find interesting is that Gina Carano, who was also on The Mandalorian, she was essentially fired from the show for being a conservative. And then they lied about her actual tweets that she gave. If you don't know the story, I did a segment on, and you can watch it on. It'll probably be easier to find on YouTube, of me going through the story with Gina the and the top 5 takeaways, I think it was. And Disney essentially fired her for having conservative viewpoints, and the gender pronoun police were like, why don't you have stuff in your bio like what your pronouns are? And so she said beep bop boop to mock them, not people who have gender dysphoria so much, but people who are trying to pressure you to identify yourself in this kind of way. And so they were upset, and Disney called her and she worked with all these people, these PR crisis people, and she's like, I can apologize, but I'm not going to do an insincere one. I'm going to do it my own way. And they didn't like that. They're like, the problem is that you're trying to be rational, and they don't want ration, they want emotion. And so she's just like, I'm not going to make an insincere apology. And so they wanted her to get like on some kind of Zoom call with like 30 LGBT people, and she's like, how about I take a couple of them out? I can look into their eyes, they can look into my eyes, we can see we're like human beings, they can see where I'm coming from. And they didn't want to do that. So after she wouldn't cooperate in the way that they wanted to cooperate, they basically had no contact. And she had tweeted out something about the pandemic, essentially like people turning on their neighbors, and made a Holocaust reference to like people turning on their neighbors. And then Disney, Lucasfilm was like, Gina Carano says things that disparage religious groups. And it's like, that's not what happened. And then they're like, she doesn't work for us anymore. And so they were waiting for their opportunity. And when that opportunity came, they're like, oh, she's anti-Semitic. So they totally misrepresented her to get rid of her. So it's amazing that Disney would be so on Gina, but they would let Pedro say all kinds of things. And I can't believe that this company isn't on people, like reeling them in, and how they even allow their artists and their talent and their writers to just go at fans, because the truth is a lot of these people in these organizations, they really resent you. If you're conservative, they really resent you. They hate you. Eric July, he does a podcast called For Canon's Sake. I really like it. But he has a rule. He's like, don't spend more than like 50% of your money invested into people who hate you. So a lot of these like really big lifelong comic book people won't buy new comic books. They won't pay to go to the movies to see the Marvel films and stuff. I'm there. I got to be honest with you. I'm not saying Shang-Chi. I think Disney is an evil organization and I want to hit him where it hurts, and I'm not saying this stuff anymore. So once I decided that, like, I didn't see Winter Soldier, I didn't see Loki, I didn't see Shang-Chi. I'm there. I'm at that point. So, and I'm not saying you have to be, but that's where I'm at. And I don't have like a hard rule on it, I guess, but that's just how I feel right now. Because I've talked about that at length in other segments, other shows, and maybe I can go more at length another time. But these people really hate you. So is it interesting that they gave Gina the boot, but their stars are up here mourning a child rapist, and Disney's PR isn't like, hey guys, can you just cool it? Reese Witherspoon also had some like wild tweets too, and I'm sure there's other celebrities as well. But and I posted a few on my Facebook. But it's just amazing. People who don't know the facts, people who are willingly spreading misinformation. I keep saying, like, you can have a flame of passion all you want, but if it's coupled with ignorance, it's going to be a wildfire that consumes this nation. So please just get educated. And if you don't know, you can just say as little as possible. You can make comments or whatever, but people are really, really, really passionate about things that they are misled on. And if you're misled and you think, I guess that's one thing, but I don't know, at least care enough to find out. I posted a video, a girl was like, Jacob Blake was killed. Jacob Blake is alive. He's paralyzed. He was shot by the police after he would not comply. He was armed. FYI to the media who spread that lie around. But he's alive? You care so much, but you don't even know the man's alive? That's who we're dealing with. But that's the show for today. I had some other thoughts, but I got to get going. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Again, I do want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com and look at the different content that I have, different articles that I have. Please make sure that you're sharing around. Invite others to my social medias on my Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikToks. All my handles are at Black Tea News, except on Twitter, it's at True Black Tea. Please make sure that you're checking out different merchandise that I have in the store. Please make sure that you are sharing it around. If you guys are considering getting some good presents for people, you can always go to Black Tea News store. I mean, who doesn't want to give someone a "You Are Not That Special" mug on Christmas? I mean, I know I would. So we got all kinds of stuff that you guys can get at blacktnews.com. So consider looking at that stuff. And again, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com as well. If you enjoy what I do and you want to leave a donation so you can help grow Black Tea, please consider doing that. Independent media, there's a lot of sites and stuff that we really like on the right, but they had to start somewhere, and you're here with the ground up on the ground floor with me, so let's keep it moving. I told that story earlier. If you're coming late about my dad, of all people, who believes some false information, and he thanked me actually for my article, complimented me, that was correcting the record on a lot of things. So so many of you have left me some kind messages. I've had some not so nice ones as well. I appreciate all of your feedback, all of your love and your support. But people have said, I'm glad to find some coverage with this perspective in regards to the Rittenhouse stuff and other topics that I talk about. And if you want to amplify voices like mine, please consider supporting Black Tea News. Like, you have an opportunity, please consider doing it. blacktnews.com/donate. Thank you guys so much for being with me today. And I will be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. God bless you guys.